Hey guys, it's Aditya again with Inspira Advantage. Thanks so much for joining us on our How to Get into Medical School web series. Today we're going to be talking about the multiple mini interview format. So in the last video we talked about traditional interviews. A lot of medical schools are now going towards a new format called the multiple mini interview format, more commonly known as MMIs. In MMIs, you usually have about 8 to 10 stations of different situations and scenarios, and you have shorter time throughout each of these stations, maybe about 5 to 10 minutes, to answer questions or be in certain scenarios. These formats are supposed to be more holistic and less prone to bias. Since you're being evaluated by 8 interviewers instead of 1 to 2, a single interview has less weight. That may be good if you feel like you messed up one of the stations. You still have 7 more to recover. And it's possible to redeem yourself later in the interview session. Each medical school will have their own array of multiple interview stations. You don't know what to expect in the room until about 30 to 60 seconds before. That's when they let you read the prompt and kind of take some notes before you go in. Most of the time, they'll also have the prompt within the room upon request. So you don't need to memorize the entire thing. But it is important to prepare yourself mentally before you walk into the room. Here are a couple examples of things that you may encounter during a multiple mini interview station. You're given a scenario and you have to role play with the scenario and explain your decision points. You may just have a simple mini traditional interview for about 5 to 10 minutes with a single interviewer. Sometimes you may have to engage in an activity with the interviewer in which you have to demonstrate your communication skills. For example, you have a picture on a piece of paper in front of you and you have to describe to the interviewer what to draw so that they can recreate what you're seeing. You may have society-based questions about health policy, health disparities, and population health in general. Sometimes you may have to type responses to either photo or video prompts. And sometimes these are the most nerve-wracking. You may have patient actors in which you have to pretend you're with the patient and help them through that situation that they're putting you in. This type of interview is definitely a mental endurance game. If you feel you messed up in one room, you can't let that get to you. You have to pick yourself up and move on and do the best you can in the remaining stations. Because you have about 8 to 10 sections, if you mess up on one, you still have plenty more to redeem yourself. The other thing that can be stressful about this sort of interview session is that you have about 30 to 60 seconds before you walk into the room. In those 30 to 60 seconds is when you're going to find out what you're going to be experiencing in that room, and for some people that can be very anxiety provoking. Don't try to freeze up, just be very calm, read the prompt carefully, and try to identify what it is that they're trying to ask of you. It's impossible to have a full response ready by the time you enter the room. The point is not to memorize and spit out a canned response. The point is to prime your response. Read through the question carefully, kind of have an idea of what you'll be talking about, what experience are you going to bring up, what reflective statement are you going to bring up, and while you're in the room, try to add and refine to that response. That's the part that will take practice because you're essentially impromptu and spontaneously adding more details while also trying to remain coherent. Specifically for scenario-based stations in which you're asked to explain how you would handle a certain situation, I'd recommend sticking to a template so that you don't overspeak or word vomit. If you're given a scenario, follow these 4 steps to formulate your response. Number 1, demonstrate an understanding of what the situation is. You can basically start your response by saying, so I'm understanding that this is the situation and this is my role in it. Number 2, acknowledge the barriers and considerations of the scenario. This is where you have to explain, this is what you have to keep in mind before you make your decision. And you can also start to acknowledge these are the people that are in the situation and will be affected by the situation. Number 3, demonstrate empathy of both sides. This is also commonly called playing devil's advocate. This is where you explain, I can see how each side of the conflict feels in this situation. On one hand, party A may feel this about what's going on, but party B also has some relevant complaints and concerns as well. You acknowledge that both sides have different ways of thinking, but you are thinking about both of them. And number 4 is coming to a decision. This part isn't as important as walking the interviewer through your thought process because that's what they're interested in. But this is a way of closing up the discussion so that you can sound coherent and you're not word vomiting. If you go through this templated response, you're bound to be very coherent, concise, but also hit the points that the interviewer is looking for. And the interviewer always has the opportunity to ask you more questions if they feel they need more information from you. So those are some preliminary tips for how to deal with multiple mini interview sessions. Again, it is a little nerve-wracking in the sense that you don't know what's coming in the room until 30 seconds before. And for a lot of people, messing up one station can really get them in a funk. It's important to keep moving, have fun with it, and realize that if you mess up one station, that doesn't mean that you messed up the entire interview. You have moments to redeem yourself. Congrats again on getting to this stage in the medical school process. Your chances of getting into medical school have increased, but you're still not a shoo-in yet. You still have to prepare and do very well in these interviews for you to get that dream acceptance that you're hoping for. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. If you're liking what you're seeing, subscribe below. We'll have more videos on the way. Stay tuned for the next video.